Today in our Taste of the Ozarks, Chef Nicole is showing us how to make a spinach artichoke appetizer. That was hard to say, with a bit of a twist.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Taste of the Ozarks. We are officially in squash season. One of my favorites is spaghetti squash. I like to cook them in just about every way possible. I found these tiny little individual serving size spaghetti squash out at Farmer Dan's place at Fast Night Creek. And I just couldn't help but think that it's tiny, it's almost appetizer size. We should do everyone's favorite appetizer, which is a spinach and artichoke dip, but we're gonna do it with spaghetti squash, right? So what we've done is you wanna take your spaghetti squash, put your knife point in, because that's gonna be the easiest way for you to get into it. And then you're just gonna work your way around your squash here, just so that you're being really safe about this and that you're not potentially risking any kind of injury. These can be a little difficult to cut, and going slow is gonna be the best way to do it. And then once you get to a point where you've got this much space, you can kind of just start turning it sideways and pulling it straight apart there. Just like you see, we've got this one pulled apart here. And then we're gonna take the inside and the seeds and just scrape those guys out of there. Don't really need to do anything with those other than, maybe put them in the chicken coop or the compost pile or whatever it is you plan to do with it there. And then once we've got all of the seeds out, if there's some of these little stringy pieces left, that's totally fine. That's the natural texture and consistency of your spaghetti squash. But what you want to do now is drizzle it with a little bit of olive oil. And this squash is like a sponge. It's immediately going to soak that up. And then we're going to sprinkle it with just a little bit of garlic, salt, and pepper. And then you want to put these face down in a 350-degree oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. We want them to get really nice and tender. The outside shell is going to just shrink a little bit, and that's really how you're going to know it's done. We've got a couple that are all done here. You can see they've started to brown around the outside. When they're flipped over, you can see that you can easily push in the skin on the bottom. It even starts to look a little on the wrinkly side, and it's got some brown spots. That's how you know you're good and done. So we pulled these out of the oven and we let them cool completely, just because you have to handle these in order to shred the spaghetti squash, and you don't want them to be hot when you're doing that. That just makes it a lot more difficult. So get your fork, and then you're really just gonna scrape along the sides here just to try and get all that meat loosened up. All right. Now the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna use our fresh spinach here. And take a good sized pinch of this, and we want to really push it down in there, because what we're going to do is we're going to cover the spinach with the spaghetti squash. If you just have the spinach on top, it's going to dry out in the oven, and that's really not what we want. We want to make sure that it stays nice and covered so that it wilts for us, but doesn't become spinach chips, because that is definitely not what we're looking for. So scoop over your spaghetti squash, kind of bury your spinach in it as much as you possibly can. All right, got that nice and covered. So the next thing we're going to do is kind of place some of our artichoke heart pieces on the top here. You can chop these a little thinner if you want to. I like to use the quartered ones. I think that they're just pretty, and I love artichokes, so getting a nice bite of quartered artichoke is always fun for me. And then the last thing is how we're gonna make it nice and creamy. So traditional spinach and artichoke dip uses cream cheese and heavy cream. We're actually gonna use some goat cheese in this, just for a little bit of variety. But put some crumbles just kind of all across the top here. And this goat cheese is gonna get really nice and melty in the oven, which is gonna be perfect. We're gonna put this into our 350-degree oven and let it go for about 25 to 30 minutes. We want it nice and hot all the way through. We want our goat cheese nice and melty. And we have our finished one over here. And you can see that goat cheese has gotten really nice and soft. Nice and creamy, and you can even kind of stir it around in there and get that creamy goat cheese all mixed in. You can see our spinach has gotten nice and wilty there, not too dried out. Great flavor and consistency. Let's move it over into our serving dish. And there you go. I mean, you could eat it with chips if you wanted to, or just eat it with a fork, but you've got a delicious, creamy spinach and artichoke spaghetti squash that you're gonna wanna try. Give it a try, and we'll see you guys next time on Taste of the Ozarks.